Good morning, everybody, from sunny and not so warm South Florida. I'm complaining today because it's 52 degrees outside, which is about 10 degrees Celsius. And I just got off the phone with my colleague in Ottawa, and it's minus 15 Celsius there. But here I am complaining, walking the dog, freezing, literally feeling so cold, and thinking to myself, how did I ever survive across the border where I came from in Canada, in Toronto? And I am here today with my new friend and amazing strategic partner, Scott Royal Smith, who has joined us on Investing Across Borders to discuss some really amazing stuff. And you guys are all going to want to chat with us both about how to help you create this proper structure for investing across borders. Scott has created quite a following for himself. He has an amazing Facebook group. He does YouTube videos about all kinds of things. And as a matter of fact, that's how I indirectly found him, because a colleague of mine who's a real estate investor and a partner of mine recommended, I was asking about land trusts, and he recommended Scott. And I reached out to Scott and we just connected, and we have already started working together and helping clients. Scott, please introduce yourself and share just a little bit of your story. It's an impressive one.
Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, so I got started in real estate investing actually when I was in law school, and I bought my transmission and auto repair shop, which I rehabbed the business in the building to flip it at the end of law school, so to graduate without any debt. And that's kind of where I fell in love with entrepreneurship and real estate, because I actually
What a
made more
smart
money
guy in law
on the real
school. Like
estate.
when all those people are geeking out on law stuff and thinking, I'm never going to get through this thing, your brilliant foresight allowed you or pushed you in the entrepreneurial track to start investing in real estate at a young age. That's amazing.
Yeah, it just kind of like snowballed from there, Lauren. I was working in litigation after I got out of law school and doing work at the trial courts and appellate courts, but I just kept doing real estate on the side. So as I continued to grow my real estate portfolio, I realized that I was actually making more money easier in real estate than I was doing my law job. So I left the law
Surprise.
job. Yeah, you know after 2 years. And then I just worked on real estate and had ran into a lot of problems that many other real estate investors go into, which is, well, how am I supposed to hold all of these assets? And then how am I supposed to use an asset holding company and operating companies? How am I supposed to prepare things for taxes to make sure that that's streamlined? How do I manage all my bank accounts and accounting structures? How do I do my estate planning? So real estate investing really became about everything but the real estate at one point. So I had to solve those problems for myself. And then people started asking me like, hey, Scott, what did you put together? What did you do? And as I told them what I did, they asked me, hey, can you put that together for me too? And that's kind of how I accidentally started Royal Legal Solutions, because it was just based upon, helping the local real estate investors, and then wanted to go into some podcasting to just share with the public, like, hey, here's some cool info that'll probably help you. And from there, it was just the phone rang off the hook
Right.
after sharing about the stuff we did, because it turns out there's not many one-stop shops out there that can handle everything with a single point of contact that you need. And that's what we do for real estate investors now, is say, like, listen, our goal is to be able to make it where all you have to focus on is how to find the money, find the next great deal, and we can show you how to do everything else that needs to happen on the back end.
That reminds me, I actually have a great connection for you. Do you know Dave Dubeau?
No, I don't think I've
Okay,
met
so
Dave.
I'm going to introduce you to Dave. I've been on his podcast. He was just on mine on Friday, and he
Hmm,
helps a real estate investor specifically raise money without rejection. So that's probably a great connection for you. So I will make sure to make that introduction. See that? We're
awesome.
on the podcast, and
There
I
we
can't
go.
help myself. I'm just a connector.
That's
Um,
it.
so Scott, the interesting thing that one of the things that I found interesting, at least, is that your middle name really is Royal. Like your parents had this foresight. Like I thought it was some, oh, he's making this up, Royal Legal Solutions, to make it sound all grand and whatever. But it's actually really your middle name. So it was just a natural to call it Royal Legal Solutions, as opposed to Smith, which doesn't differentiate it very much. So, or Scott Smith Legal, which is kind of dull. This is Royal Legal Solutions, because you're providing a royalty level service. And you're mentioning of the one-stop shop, which is exactly what I'm offering on the cross-border and investing side, in terms of not necessarily the asset protection, although now with Scott as my partner, that is one of our components, because we offer these 8 steps to investing across borders and 10 steps to immigrate through real estate. And Scott is one of those steps. And without that asset protection and the creation of the proper entity structuring, you are basically going to hit walls every step of the way. And so many people, and I'm sure you see this every single day, are not willing to spend a few dollars at the outset. They'd rather start, run, and then hit walls. And then they come to you and it costs what? Double, triple, 3, 4 times as much, because they have to fix all the damage and then they have to start doing things the right way, right?
Yeah, I think typically the way that way I see it work out is the same thing that I do sometimes, right? Like I'm guilty of this just as much as anybody else, where I will dive into something new that maybe I understand it partially,
Right.
and then I'll just dive into it. And a lot of times I can actually get to the end objective I was looking for just by sheer force of will and researching,
It's
and
so
I'm really
true.
diligent on it, right? And I can get to that end point. But what I always missed along the way is like, how durable did I get to that end point? Right. So if you're an entrepreneur or you've been in business, right, you know that the fastest way to get to $1 or to grow your business is for you to do everything. Right. But we also know that when you do it that way, that your business actually isn't very strong,
No.
that you need different people in your life that are specialized in little pieces, and that your job really should be is to understand how all the pieces work and then
Right.
to quarterback those together. And that's typically where we're at. And then what we've done at Royal Legal Solutions is actually take it one step further, which is we actually know all of the pieces, just like how Lauren does here with your work with the immigration side of pieces, with your immigration work. We know all the pieces. We can actually do most all of them in-house for that. So we can also quarterback all of those pieces for you. And then that helps you truly be able to have a hands-off experience that's going to be really high quality, and that you're not having to quarterback between like one professional and another professional, and then they disagree with each other. And then maybe they don't actually disagree with each other, but you're the middleman and you don't really fully understand all of it. And it turns into this frustrating piece where at the end of it, you're like, I hope I did it right. Right. And then
Oh, goodness.
it's about removing that worry is why I think I invest in hiring professionals to help me, is because I don't want to have to worry about, did I really do it all right?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, there's going to be stuff that happens if you missed even the littlest piece in that process. And that stuff could lead to not only potentially legal ramifications, but huge tax and financial ramifications that could be not only detrimental, but could basically demolish your whole business. And so it doesn't make a lot of sense. And Scott is speaking my language. It's like as if you're promoting my business, because it's exactly the same model of that quarterback holding everybody accountable, making the client feel confident and comfortable, removing the worry from the client so that they can accomplish their goals, investing in real estate, investing across borders, investing in real estate and setting up businesses across borders. So at the end of the day, I know that you don't only work with real estate investors, right? What other
Yeah.
types of businesses are prominent for you, business owners?
Yeah, so it's the business side of things is actually really straightforward, right? I mean, we're not working, like I'm not setting up and working for Fortune 500 companies, right? I mean, we're typically talking about the person that has, under 100 employees, right? Is looking at, okay, what kind of business structure would I set up? How is that going to work for me in terms of tax pieces, right? But most of our clients are actually going to be the people that are underneath, 15, 20 employees. It's the people that have, hey, I have like between, 1 and 10 pieces of real estate that I hold as like an investment, right? So it's just the very average, the common person that you would think as like a, trying to get to that next phase of wealth and need somebody that can help quarterback all of the intricacies and the foundations of what it really takes to scale that, right? But the business side of things is actually really straightforward. That's just a tax decision and a little bit about how are we going to raise money. Businesses are actually easy. What's really difficult actually is wealth. Wealth becomes a much more complex piece, because with with wealth, we have to look about what kinds of protections do we have in place? How are we going to be reporting on taxes of that? How do we separate the active side of that wealth, right, from the passive side of that wealth? Because that can have different tax implications. And then working cross border, it can become really important to consider your structuring that you want, because the different structure impacts the kind of tax that you would have to pay. So then you have to think about, okay, what's the efficient structures, both on my tax reporting, both on my asset protection side of things? When am I going to be able to get financing? And that's where it really comes into play of like, okay, well, the real estate that you might have is really going to be the major focus. The business side of things is usually fairly straightforward.
When you're talking about this cross-border investor, which obviously is a lot of my client base and my audience, what is the number one challenge that you see them facing as they are investing in the US from other countries, obviously most particularly Canada, since we both are dealing with Canadians on a daily basis?
Yeah, so the number one piece I think is actually having them put together the right team, because it's hard enough to typically know what you need to do inside of your own country, right? But then when you're going cross borders, it's like, well, it's a whole different language, right? Like for example, on the domestic side of things, we never talk about limited partnership structures because limited
Oh,
partnership
really? Never
structures
on
don't.
the US side. Interesting.
I mean, very, very rarely, right? I mean, you're only talking about a few different areas where it might be beneficial for some type of financing on commercial properties or apartment complexes, where the bank will want you to do a particular type of entity structure because of how many signers they want on a loan, right? So it's a very discrete number of LPs, right? And the reason why is because LLCs actually accomplish the same thing that
Right,
LPs do. They do it in
right.
a much more efficient, easier way.
And less
Um,
expensive.
and they're less expensive
Mhm.
typically, much less expensive, right, to put together. But if you're a Canadian investor, you say, well, I can't
All
use
that goes by the wayside.
yeah.
Bye-bye.
And you're like, I can't use any of those US laws that are great
Right.
for people that live in the US, because Canada is going to look at that and say, nope, we're going to tax you as a corporation at much higher rates. So now we have
Yeah,
to use an LP structure. So
right.
it's those types of issues that come up, that only somebody that's accustomed to working cross border is going to know, how do we solve both countries' issues? Because there's a whole another set of tax laws and asset protection laws that have to be considered to know how is that going to play out if there's a lawsuit in a whole nother country.
Yeah. So let's talk about LP. First of all, I'm not really sure if we defined what an LP is. So why don't you define that for our audience? Because just simplify it a little bit so they understand how that looks.
Yeah, so an LLC structure and LP structures, you should think of these as if they were a different person. Under the U.S. law, that these types of corporate structures, they're treated as if they're actual people, and it's actually a different person than you, right? So in a typical LLC structure, it's just one entity, and then there's shareholders of that entity, right? I think everybody's pretty familiar with that type of structure, right? You have your manager of that LLC, and then you have all of the shareholders of the LLC. The manager gets to control the LLC. The shareholders are the one that own the LLC and all of the assets. Inside of a limited partnership structure, it's treated very similarly, actually. You have in a limited partnership structure, you have two pieces, but that's called a limited partner and a general partner. And the general partner just acts just like a manager of an LLC. They get to control the limited partnership, and then the limited partner acts just like the members of the LLC. They're the ones, the equity owners. They actually own it. So the general partner gets to control the limited partnership. The limited partner owns all of the assets of the partnership, and it's that way you're able to have essentially exactly the same form and function of an LLC, but just in a slightly different structure. And for some reason, Canada decided that we're going to tax it more advantageously.
Yeah. Well, Canada has a lot of little quirks. So,
Yeah. Oh, we
I
just play
mean,
the game. They make the rules, right?
yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but as dismally as the US has handled this whole COVID thing, there are no vaccines in Canada right now. There the healthcare workers that have been vaccinated, that's done. Some of the people in the elderly homes, they've been vaccinated, but the vaccines ran out and they're just sitting there. That's why they closed the borders, or part of why, because as much as Canada is ahead on in so many ways, unfortunately, there's a lot of politics involved with this whole vaccine. So we won't go down that road, but it's just sad because my mom, I'd love her to be able to come here and get a vaccine so that I could see her. I haven't seen her in 14 months.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
I think what you're underscoring there, Lauren, is really important, is because it's about the flexibility that you can have in life, right? About, do I want to be in one country or another? And how many options do I have? And a really wealthy guy once told me once that he's like, it's not dollars that make you wealthy. It's how many options you have at any given moment of what you can do. And sometimes those are prohibited by money, but most of the time they're not. Right, as just to underscore your point here. And I think that's what becomes like really important when we start looking at like different types of challenges that we're facing in different countries or in our businesses, right? The idea here is to say, well, what does a life look like that allows me to have more options, that allows me to have more stability? And that's where I believe that this comes from, first having an oxygen mask on our own faces, which is, how do we have passive income with secured assets coming in that the skies can fall, Royal Eagle Solutions can fail, Armageddon happens, the government gets overthrown, and I'm pretty confident that I'm going to still get my rent check, that comes in.
It's a crazy thing. It really is a crazy thing, because it's one of the few areas that even when there's dips in the market, that eventually the dips are it's ebbs and flows, and it's going to come back. And you also mentioned something about options. So I'm all about options. A lot of people, a lot of my clients, a lot of people that are looking into getting an investor visa or a trader visa, these visas that are available based on treaty with certain countries like Canada, most of Europe, and parts of South America, and so on, Central America. The issue is, a lot of people say, well, I don't want to move to the US. Okay, great. But don't you want that option? Especially for countries that are dealing with a lot of political unrest. Okay, so you want like a place like, and I'm not going to, let's use Mexico as an example, because you just never know what might happen in Mexico. And there's, thank God things are calm now, but they have access to a visa. So as a Mexican resident, Mexican national, wouldn't you love to have that in your pocket, so that eventually, if you needed to come to the US and run your business, you could? These are options that you need to be looking at the early stage, not at the 11th hour. Now, for example, with Canada, eventually those borders are going to open. Eventually, people will be able to transverse back and forth. Eventually, COVID will be under control. So all of this is kind of under the caveat that obviously we can't control borders, we can't control travel, but we do want to give you options, and giving you options also includes protecting your assets. And the more that you have, the more that protection becomes important. And if you have children, you have to protect your assets, because you need to at least make sure that you can't be taken down, or that you don't have liability. For example, when you own a property and something happens on that property, if you haven't set up the right structure, you're going to be personally liable for that incident. So there's a lot of items. That's just a little tiny version of the bigger picture of what Scott is talking about, and giving yourself these options, whether it be in terms of cross-border investing, cross-border asset protection, cross-border immigration. All of these are items that are essential to consider at the beginning, not when it's way down the road.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we have a tagline, Royal Legal Solutions, which is the law protects the proactive. And it seems to be time and time again, it's the people that take the proactive steps, the ones that are willing to make the investments on the front end of things to have the proper setups and the proper foundations, are the ones that win in the long term, right? You always lose in the short term, which is nobody ever tells you. When you make these types of investments, right, you always lose in the short term, because your buddy who didn't make the investment can run faster than you, and in the short run, he'll do it for a little while. You fast forward the 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, then those guys always lose, right? And all you have to do to be able to know that's true is just go find wealthy people and ask them, like, what type of time scales do you really think in when it comes to like your major goals of your worth? And they're thinking in year, 3 year, 5 year, and sometimes up to 10-year time scales of like what they're going after. And the reason why is because that's what durability takes. Like, if you want durable progress, like durable, large progress in your life, it actually takes time, and it can take up to you know, it takes time to be able to mature. And I think that that's where it comes into saying, well, real maturity then requires us to be able to say, well, I don't want the shiny object of today, right? I really want to be able to know like that what my future is going to be, not like my tomorrow.
So it's all about a marathon versus a sprint.
Yeah.
And yesterday I was interviewed on a podcast, and the woman had a great quote. She said, "Don't chase, don't chase dollars to save dimes." And it's so true. And this comes back to the other part of this discussion, which is, let's talk a little bit about value and the value of that protection and how invaluable it is over the durable long term. It may cost a little bit more in the short term, but your friend that's running and running and running and getting that little bit ahead is going to hit a wall eventually. And then you're going to keep going and building and scaling and building and scaling and creating this ongoing passive wealth that is protected every step of the way. And that's so essential. So I just, I thank you for being there as a resource and being available to protect our clients' assets as they're building and expanding across borders and investing in different countries and investing in the US. Now, the other part, and I'm not sure how relevant this is for you. Do you also, what do you recommend doing if somebody is creating a structure to invest outside of the US?
Well, it depends upon where the asset is located, right? So typically what you have to do is you have to look at two pieces. You have to look at how does that asset and the legal structures of that country where the asset's located, how does that coordinate together, right? So that might be something new, right? That has to be looked into. But if it's, Canadian investors looking inside of the United States, that's pretty well understood of how do we do that with Royal Legal Solutions. The other piece that you have to look at outside of where the asset's located and what needs to happen there is also where the principal is located, of like how will that structuring be treated for their tax purposes.
Yeah.
So it can take coordinating with multiple professionals to be able to get to what's the correct strategy. And I'm the first one to come out and say, listen, we don't know everything that there is to know about every possible type of deal, right? But the thing that we're really good at is, one, we're really good at learning. And we're also really good at being able to find who are the people that really know their stuff, right? Versus the people that think they do into it. And that comes from being able to have specialized knowledge in an area and knowing what's the right kind of questions to ask and what are the right things to kind of push on. So when we bring in people to our firm to say, hey, listen, would you like to participate in what we call family office, right? It's under $100 monthly subscription to the firm that gives people unlimited access to our staff for any questions that they have, gives them a quarterly review of all of their structuring and how they're managing their structure, their bank accounts, their accounting, et cetera, to make sure that if they're ever sued, everything is held up for them. Those are a lot of the types of issues that can pop up, right? Which is, hey, I'm looking for XYZ type of person to be able to help me. That could be like, hey, I want to go acquire some apartment complexes, but I don't know who to work with into it, right? Well, what we'll do is we'll take our knowledge about what makes a good apartment wholesaler into it, right? Who are the types of people that Scott would put his money with to invest with, and say, great, well, these are the types of people that we would recommend for that. And so that's what it really takes, I think, at the highest level of this game, is to be able to have to be able to know who can actually help you find the right connections. And I think that's one of the things that you do so well, Lauren, is that you find really good people to partner with. So that way you can, when people come to you, you can say, hey, listen, I don't know how to do that piece, or I don't do that piece, or I don't want to do that piece, but I know who's the person that can, get it done for you.
Like taxes. I am never going to be a tax person. It's not my core competency. It never will be. So you have to know what is your lane, and you have to stay in it. And you're not professing to be an immigration expert. I'm not professing to be an asset protection expert, but together we can provide solutions to all things related to investing across borders. And that's the beauty of the partnership that we're building. Scott, how do people reach you? I mean, you're everywhere, and YouTube is, I think, you're most prominent, but how do people reach you? And I know you have a group that you can subscribe to on Facebook and access all kinds of amazing resources.
Yeah, the best thing to do is actually just go to the royallegalsolutions.com and click the tab at the top that says get a price. It'll take you to another page that has a brief quiz to it, as well as some testimonial videos and educational videos. All of the best content that we have is actually on that page. If you go to royallegalsolutions.com and click the get a price, then take that quiz, and that quiz gives us all of the basic information that we need about you to know, where you're at, what you're going after, are we going to be a good fit? And what that allows us to do is on that very first phone call that we have with you, we're already going to know whether, you're what you're going after, where you're at now and what you're going after, if you are somebody that we can help to be able to go do that, right? So it really just saves you a lot of time, but it also lets us come to the table with actual real information for you about, how we can help you with that. So, and all you have to do to be able to have that connection, to be able to get all of the free books. I think we just released our 11th book last month, and all of our Facebook groups and everything like that, is just go to royallegalsolutions.com, click the get a price at the top of the page, fill out that quiz, and then our staff will get you plugged into all of the resources, all of the groups, and all of the additional content and information that we have there. And we just give it all away for free as a part of our mission, which is our mission out there is to educate everybody, put all the information out there. You can do it all yourself if you want to, or
Knock
we're here
yourself
to help
out.
you do it, put together.
It's like me. I mean, if you want to do it, go ahead. But at the end of the day, we're here to make the whole process that much easier. But yes,
Yeah.
we want to give you the steps and arm you with the information so that if you wanted to do it on your own, you hypothetically could. Scott, I thank you for your time. I'm excited. I'm going to be on your podcast called The Real Estate Nerds, right?
That's right. The Real Estate Nerds podcast. We're going to shoot here in a couple of days.
In a couple of days, which is cool. I guess I'm a real estate nerd now. That's okay. I don't mind. As long as I'm helping others and impacting them, I don't care if you're going to call me a nerd or not. That's all good. Scott, I thank you. And I look forward to, we have like 3 calls this week with clients, and then we're doing our podcast. We're stuck with them for a while here. So thanks again. Stay safe, everybody. Stay warm. And thank you for joining us on Investing Across Borders with Lauren Cohen, international lawyer and real estate expert. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.